Major breaking news this afternoon. WNBA star Brittney Griner has been released from a Russian prison. President Biden making that announcement this morning at the White House. You see him there with Griner's wife there right behind him, alongside Vice President Kamala Harris.
Now, that swap taking place at the airport in Abu Dhabi. Griner exchanged for a Russian prisoner who has been in U.S. custody, an arms dealer named Victor Bout. Now, Griner's wife, Sherelle, thanking members of the Biden administration and others who secured her wife's release, something officials have been working on for months now.
Let's go to Washington now to ABC senior White House correspondent Mary Bruce with the very latest on this. Mary, what can you tell us?
Well, a lot of happy sighs of relief here at the White House this morning. Brittney Griner is now on her way as we speak back home to the U.S. After 294 days in Russian detention, sentenced to 9 years on those drug charges, she has now been released, swapped for notorious Russian arms dealer Victor Bout. Now, the president earlier this morning speaking with Griner, we saw him tweet out those photos of their conversation in the Oval Office. The president there with the vice president and Sherelle, Griner's wife. As you can imagine, a lot of smiles in the Oval Office this morning and a huge sigh of relief. We are told Griner herself is in good spirits. As you can imagine, she is feeling extremely grateful. Now, we are told all of this really came together just in the last 48 hours after a lot of painstaking negotiations here between this administration and the Russians. Of course, you'll recall earlier in the summer, the U.S. put forth a proposal to try and secure the release of both Brittney Griner and Paul Whelan. But we are told that over the last several weeks, it became clear that the Russians were only willing to negotiate over Griner, that they viewed Paul Whelan's case, those sham espionage charges against him, extremely differently. And the president, as we heard him say this morning, that this wasn't a choice of which American to bring home, that the Russians made it clear it was Griner or no one. And guys, she is now on her way back, expected to be back here on U.S. soil within 24 hours.
All right, so Mary, with that said, what does this mean now for the efforts to release Whelan?
Well, officials have made it very clear they have not forgotten about Paul Whelan. We heard the president himself underscore that in his remarks earlier today. Those negotiations continue. We are told that high-level administration officials actually spoke directly with Paul Whelan, informing him of the decision to bring home Brittney Griner. Understandably, he was disappointed, but his family actually put out a statement saying they understand this decision. They obviously are happy to see Griner being released. They are devastated, of course, and hoping, obviously, that Paul Whelan will be home soon, too.
All right, Mary Bruce at the White House. Mary, thank you very much for that report. And now we turn to ABC Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas standing by in Washington with more details emerging about that prisoner swap. Always good to see you. What more can you tell us about Victor Bout?
Well, he's known as the Merchant of Death. He was one of the biggest arms trafficker in the world when he was arrested and taken down by the United States government. He was a person that was serving 25 years because he was involved in against weapons trafficking around the globe, including to countries in Africa where so many people were killed with weapons that were sold by Bout. Now, this is a person that many in law enforcement wanted to serve every bit of his term, but clearly there was an emphasis on trying to get Ms. Griner home. Law enforcement officials decided that over time, Mr. Bout's relevance and importance to the United States government was no longer that important. He was known or suspected of being as an intelligence officer, perhaps, or intelligence operative for the Russians, and there was a period of time when they thought he would be a valuable asset, but because he'd been in a U.S. prison for more than a decade, that had diminished, so the priority became getting that young lady home.
And Pierre, the White House is concerned about Americans traveling to the region, understandably. What do we need to know?
Well, I think the bottom line, and I was surprised with how blunt President Biden was this morning. He made it clear, if you're going to countries like Russia and or Iran and certain places that are in open conflict with the United States, you need to understand that you're potentially at risk if you're an American, that those countries don't have due process in the way that we do, and that you could become a pawn for those countries to use as leverage to get what they want.
Thank you so much, Pierre. Thank you for that update. And Dr. Jen Ashton here. After 9 months in a Russian prison, that has to be incredibly hard on anyone. Talk to us about the psychological impact of imprisonment.
Well, you know what? There's a lot in the medical literature about this, you guys. Most of it taken from the world of psychology and psychiatry based on people who have been held hostage or in captivity. Obviously, some factors at play here, the duration of imprisonment or captivity, the conditions, the age of the person and what kind of pre-existing, if any, medical conditions or psychological conditions they had. But in terms of the psychological future, for increased risk of obviously PTSD, depression, anxiety, it really comes down to 3 areas: cognitive, emotional, and social. So you're talking about cognitively, there could be problems with someone's memory or concentration. Emotionally, guilt, anger, shock, all natural emotions that we could expect. And socially, the need or want to withdraw temporarily from friends, family, or your work.
And after dealing with something of this nature, how does one get back into regular life?
Slowly, carefully, obviously with professional help of trained mental health professionals and according to your own schedule and no one else's. It's not one size fits all.
All right, Dr. Jen, thank you very much.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.